The last time I was asked to give an autobiography, my life story in 20 minutes, I just vomited and started crying and ran to my room and began shaking in the dark. This was at North Star Transitions Rehab in 2018. I was born Dylan Andrew Thomas, 10/17/1989. I am a perfect 9 in numerology. My childhood was a beautiful one. I was blessed with a lucky set of parents. They worked very hard at the post office and were excellent caregivers. However, my childhood was plagued, like most in my generation, by preventable vaccine injuries. For instance, I suffered a myriad of adverse reactions to these defective pharmaceutical products made in China, and so did my siblings and cousins. I was afflicted with bizarre rashes, an oozing green belly button, chronic upper respiratory allergies or asthma, arguably autism spectrum disorder, certainly a communication disorder, live herpes virus, and at one point a nervous tic of pulling out my own hair. This was all through elementary school, with the exception of the communication disorder. I cried a lot and could not talk about how I felt until I was 25 years old. The live virus of herpes of the lip afflicted both myself and my younger sister for life, with the same contaminated batch with the same inoculation on the same day. My older sister was afflicted with lupus, probably from a vaccine-induced Th2 shift in her immune system. My cousin Kenneth is certified autistic. I remind you, there exists a vaccine injury court system and a vaccine injury victim compensation program. What I am describing is not that uncommon. See Vaccine Safety Conference 22 and see Dr. Brzezinski, The Cure for Cancer. This country sliced my mother and my sister open in a kidney transplant. My sister with lupus was also radiated with antiquated chemotherapy, which consequently rendered my nephew being born a cripple with cerebral palsy. All of this was preventable. It is called kicking away the ladder in trade theory. This country kicked away our ladder so we can't excel. I include my entire generation. This is how you no longer have a working class where one figure in the household can hold down a job with benefits and buy a house and a car and send their kids to college and retire with savings. That's all gone. What you have now is a service class where everyone must work 2 and 3 jobs for minimum wage without benefits, become ensnared in predatory student loan debt traps. A service class where both parents are forced to work, further disintegrating the family unit. Look, how would slave masters design a society? This is a very serious question. So, you outsourced and decimated your manufacturing base and described it as an opportunity for growth, and are left with a constantly struggling service class under constant military mass surveillance. And yes, they are fully capable of spying on everyone simultaneously. There is a massive military surveillance operation underway. You are all potential suspects, and there is a profile being built on every one of you. For instance, one casino can manage 20,000 player profiles per floor per second, to provide an example in a microcosm. They know everything about you. We know almost nothing about them except for an occasional leak here and there. But as far as my childhood, hobbies, interests, and activities included video games, piano, and dirt biking. I gave up video games in 2008 at age 18 because I felt they also stunted my social and emotional development. I had my political awakening in 2009, courtesy of the top journalist on earth, Chris Hedges, who led me to Noam Chomsky, who is among the top 10 most quoted intellectuals in human history and the greatest living intellectual on the planet, and Ralph Nader, who is ranked the 4th most influential political figure in American history. I am the company I keep. As far as schools, I was in high ability learner and accelerated learning classes throughout elementary school. Middle school were strange times, and I gradually became depressed. I bounced around high schools every year between Creighton Prep and Bellevue West. I dropped out 2 weeks before graduation and obtained my GED, diploma equivalent, and I left school much like Thomas Paine to become an actual intellectual. I began drinking and smoking marijuana at age 15. I met a girl named Mara in 2005 at age 15 at the Omaha Community Playhouse during a summer play. from 2005 through 2008. This is the single most significant incident that has had the largest impact on my life. My first thought at first sight was, I am going to die. Then I thought, well, I don't want to die, so I will do whatever it takes to marry this girl. And that was that. I automatically devoted my life to a girl named Mara with the intention of marrying her properly like a white man at first sight as a boy. I have been composing wedding music for her to sing to since she had braces in her mouth. I instinctively knew that if I held fast in celibate, patient, long-suffering, and blind faith, which is the highest form of spirituality, I would prove myself a worthy suitor. I thought about her every second of every day until 2020 when I finally let go and sent 6 .357 Magnum hollow points through her parents' front door. Loving her in vain immolated me. It destroyed my life. I accidentally ruined my parents' marriage. My little sister and I do not speak. My father feels like he failed as a dad. I am 34 years old and I still do not know how to kiss or fuck a girl, and I have never woken up next to a woman. I believe it was an Italian, Jewish, gypsy love-death curse at first sight as a child. Hex, vex, curse, see dark lotus, black magic. I am a concrete intellectual, yet I literally believe in sacred metaphysics and karma and magic and curses and evil bloodlines with empathy deleted from their gene codes. I have attempted suicide as many times as I have been attempted murder over Mara. 12 times. I've almost died 12 times over Mara. I have been stereotyped a stalker, a homewrecker, a faggot, a bitch, a pussy, a lame, a non-person, a lost alcoholic, a tweaker, a fuck-up, a failure, a terrorist, a domestic terrorist, a socialist spy, a demon, and possessed, and paranoid, and delusional, and schizophrenic, among other adjectives. I am none of the above. I am an intrepid, independent investigative researcher, a political analyst, a public citizen, a corporate crime reporter, a whistleblower, leak disseminator, an authentic composer, a poet, an up-and-coming public intellectual and political figure, as well as an aspiring author. I wrote the rough draft manuscript of my first 700-ish page handwritten book titled NSA Gang Stalking, a euphemism for corporate Christian terrorism, new dimensions of American evil, and Google's social credit system abuse of targeted individuals in the PRISM program. It chronicles a solid decade of abuse since the Occupy movement of 2011. State repression and state-sponsored terrorism manifests itself in this country as a form of Christian fascism. I was assailed by the security and surveillance state and the cult teen challenge rehab from Nebraska to Iowa to Texas to Colorado and back for at least 7 years in a row. The cult teen challenge has spread to 70 different countries around the world and is global. They are very powerful and their reach is very deep as they act in tandem with the federal government, who has virtually unlimited resources and a monopoly on legal violence. I survived surveillance, infiltration, physical harassment, electronic harassment, intimidation, setups, assaults, robberies, burglaries, assaults with deadly weapons, blackmail, coercion, character assassination, and attempted murders. Traumatic experiences are being confused for delusions of the imagination. I inhabit a mutual reality. Any talk of surveillance and disruption or criminogenic three-letter agencies such as FBI, CIA, or NSA gets one reflexively misdiagnosed, paranoid, delusional, schizophrenic within minutes, if not instantly. These medical professionals are doing exactly what they are trained and paid to do, which is to negate any accusation of government wrongdoing by automatically misdiagnosing and discrediting the victim of state repression as paranoid, delusional, schizophrenic. Textbook paranoia, they say, as if the most intrusive surveillance apparatus in human history doesn't exist. We live under a species of corporate totalitarianism in a military-industrial surveillance police state, not a participatory democracy. This is a world which George Orwell could not have concocted, and we are living in it. Conspiracy theory becomes reality. Life is war, and every day is a battle to me. There are no checks and balances. We as citizens have no input whatsoever. There has been a Stalinist rewriting of our own history. We do not live under a system of laissez-faire capitalism. Unfettered, unregulated capitalism, as Karl Marx understood, is a revolutionary force. None of the economists foresaw the emergence of a supranational global sort of casino capitalism that we have today. These international corporations, which are artificial entities, have no loyalties to the nation state itself and therefore do not recirculate resources extracted from them back into the communities of origin, which creates a vacuum or a black hole. It is not a sustainable system. You do not have to graduate from a school of economics to see this. None of the prominent economists or political theorists foresaw the concept of permanent war or the permanent war economy either, or climate devastation or nuclear capacities of assured mutual destruction either, for that matter. This is a world that George Orwell could not have concocted, and we are living in it. And the security and surveillance state is targeting the best and brightest among you for surveillance and disruption and assassination. See Chris Hedges' full-spectrum dominance. They are taking out potential leaders, like myself. I harbor no substance-induced delusions or delusions of grandeur. I know what happened to me. I was there, and I know who I am and what I am about and what I am capable of and what is expected of me. I just have a higher estimate of my own significance, thoughts and feelings coinciding with my reality. I was very happy as a child. I contracted crippling suicidal depression from Mara from 2005 to 2020, so from age 15 to 30. The psychotic abuses of the criminal state were designed to be disorientating, straight out of a CIA torture manual, psychologically crippled the victim into full regression in the fetal position. I lived in fear every day of my life for a solid decade. I could not trust anyone. I did not feel safe anywhere. I developed a nervous twitch in my eyebrow. I managed to reestablish my bearings and recover thanks to the safety of the Lincoln Regional Center. I got them to officially acknowledge history of PTSD and properly medicate me for it. I no longer have an involuntary nervous twitch or pace for 8 hours a day or bite my nails compulsively until they bleed. The best thing that ever happened to me was my dog Winston. I got him as a puppy in 2010 when I was 20 years old. My sacred angel heart. He passed away January 5th, 2024 at age 14. I fiercely advocated through the courts for visitations with him at the LRC, and they were granted. He got to see me 4 times in the mental hospital. Winston's just a little baby angel sent from heaven just for me. I spoke with him over speakerphone 2 days before his unworlding. He grunted his goodbyes. At least he knew where I was and that I was safe. At least he got to say goodbye, so there is much needed closure in all of that. So far, since my incarceration for having a mental breakdown, July 1st, 2020, my grandfather, Kenneth Thomas, my best friend, Ryan Ross, my soul dog mate, Winston Thomas, and our dear family friend and my attorney, James Crampton, have all died. There is nothing left that you can take away from me. I have shed no tears. Trauma has changed me as a person. The pain don't hurt me no more. It was never my intention to harm anyone, and I did not. My intention was high-caliber vandalism. I shot an empty police cruiser which symbolized the criminal state in the front door of what I thought was an empty house at night of a family who abused their connections in the community and had me maltreated at an institutional level. Rights violations hurt people. I am not a schizophrenic, mentally ill, dangerous, violent person, as the leading terrorist state has so eloquently defined me. As my record shows, I have no history of violence. However, I was thrust into the arena of violence by the relentless and malicious gaslighting provocations of the criminal state. Everyone has a breaking point, and I was pushed beyond mine, and I snapped, a psychiatric casualty. It turns out that Mara Gillespie's parents don't even live there anymore, and I accidentally shot up the wrong house in what my father calls another bizarre plot twist. Shows what I know. I shall attempt to hyper-condense this. It turns out Mara got married to another swinger of a husband in an open relationship, a grotesque arrangement of no religious legitimacy. I found out the hard way in solitary confinement, where I received a restraining order in 2016 indicating a last name change. The protection order stated that my hacked and compromised cell phone I ditched on March 7, 2016 was picked up and used to frame me for a single-sentence stalker phone call to Mara while she was alone in a bar where she worked in New York in the middle of the night. They traced the phone number and blamed me. First of all, I had no idea Mara moved states or worked in a bar or got married. I found out I was framed in solitary confinement at Douglas County Jail for disturbing the peace, which constitutes psychological torture. I was denied any right of reply or the ability to defend myself. This was 2 years after 2014 when the active attack against me began. See Bill Binney, Tragedy and Hope. Quote, once you become a targeted individual, there is virtually nothing you can do, end quote. I turned down Alexander Hamilton Music Magnet School in L.A. because I thought Mara lived in Nebraska. I turned down every romantic relationship post-2018 because I decided to save myself to marry Mara. I never left Nebraska because I thought Mara lived here. Back to the active attack that began in 2014. I was attending Iowa Western for a technical music degree. I had been there for a couple semesters. One day, my cell phone and laptop got hacked, and convincing look-alike pornography and a blog that read Mara Elizabeth Gillespie were placed onto my remote-controlled devices. It fooled me. I had a nervous breakdown and typed some psychotic shit on a public Facebook page and was taken to the psych ward in Thorazine. I was disowned by my uncle Greg Thomas, MD, and banned from student housing and was virtually expelled from college. I was thrown into student loan debt. My life sabotaged. I would like to remind you that the Israeli lobby was caught hacking and placing anonymous smear sites onto pro-Palestinian activist devices in the Midwest during the same time frame. No direct correlation, but worth noting. The dark arts of the surveillance and security and surveillance state. It's information over people. It is power over people. They found out who I cared about most and used that information against me maliciously, which constitutes psychological torture. Goldilocks and the Three Cocks, the storyteller, and the blog, Mara Elizabeth Gillespie. I thought the girl I truly loved since I was a kid had become involved in pornography until 2017 when a confidential informant pulled me aside the Denver rescue mission. His name was Alex Lewis, a stranger in a new city in a new state, pulled me aside and said, that Goldilocks thing wasn't real and you are under investigation for felony stalking. I started crying because a stranger in a new city in a new state who I don't know who knows who I am is telling me about a military psyop that I endured alone in my college dorm years ago. That shattered me as a person and made me even more suicidal than I already was. I had been on life support in 2013 from an attempted suicide over Mara. This was a year prior to the active attack. I did not need any help killing myself. I woke up on life support with a ventilator breathing for me. It felt like I was drowning. Why was I in Colorado? I was forced to flee my home for the safety of Winston and my family, for I was in grave danger. I had to abandon Winston in order to keep him safe. I had been attempted murdered with hot shots of poison dope and was told the police were watching me in my room by confidential informant Dakota Ohm. And the police broke into my family's home and placed an empty book of matches with a skull on it in my room. They also put 2 pieces of paper of mine from high school that were in bins in my closet onto my bed sheet. One was the cover page to a 2008 ACLU report on the military-industrial surveillance complex. The second were transcripts from 2010 I compiled and printed of Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge communication stating that, quote, we need to begin to shoot down spy planes, end quote. I no longer felt safe in my home or my hometown, so I fled for my life. I wrote a 700-ish page handwritten book chronicling the events that transpired. 2014, mindfucked to suicide with look-alike pornography and Mara blog, expelled from college. 2015, attempted statutory rape setup scenario with a scantily dressed, barely underage girl who propositioned me for sex while I was walking Winston. I declined. Her pimp picked her up. The authorities tried to make me a registered sex offender. 2015 was also full of failed controlled by sting operations. They tried to entrap and imprison me. Please let me finish. 2016, I caught a video of an illegal weapon signal targeting my childhood home out my bedroom window using an original smartphone with no SIM card and no cellular service at approximately 1 a.m. I recorded floating, blinking white orb lights that sounded like digital cicadas hovering in the middle of my street. A Sarpy County Sheriff's cruiser sped by at double the speed limit with no headlights and fried my phone with an EMP, destroying physical evidence of war crimes being committed against innocent American citizens, civilians on U.S. domestic soil a few minutes after I began recording. Quote, "They were already watching you," end quote. Confidential informant Derek Tyler, Douglas County Jail, 2021. This was February. March 7th, I was framed for a phone call. April, I was lured to a front house by CI Brandon Lee, who stated he, quote, "is with the mob of information," end quote. I was pumped full of liquor and Xanax. I blacked out. While unconscious, CI Matt Barron put a female dress on me and took blackmail pictures of me. May, I wound up in jail for disturbing the peace, a crime I feel I did not commit, and refused to plead guilty. I also refused a TB shot because vaccines are retarded, ineffective, and dangerous, and because I do not have tuberculosis. So they threw me in level 1 medical lockdown. Not before a guard said, "You're just like your cousin," and an inmate said, "The Gillespies are well connected in the community." Another inmate said, "Stripper Island, I fucked her, you were just a thought." While in solitary, they served me with a protection order indicating a last name change stating that I had been framed. Then they sent CI Eddie in. He said, "She'll be your best friend and you should have been a man. And what? If you can't have her, no one can," and all types of stereotypical shit. They assumed I was a stalker, diametrically opposite of what you are describing. Anyways, I got out after 3 months. I was confronted by 2 uniformed military men in my neighborhood. One told me to get in to the back seat of a black SUV. The driver turned back to me and asked, "What's your security clearance?" I said, "I have no idea what the fuck you are talking about." We sat in silence. Then I left. All 2016 was full of failed controlled buy, sting operations, and attempted murders. 2017, I fled to Texas. I was harassed by law enforcement and members of the cult Teen Challenge Rehab. I was attempted murdered. I was attempted kidnapped. I barely got out of a car that was stolen that had all of my luggage in it. I was told by confidential informant Cameron Michaels, "The government's testing you." Very long story short, I caught a Greyhound back to Nebraska, packed a backpack, collected my $300 in tax returns, bought a train ticket to Denver for $79. I used cash, told no one where I was going. I had no phone. I got to Colorado. I found a hostel that only charged $15 per night. The next night I was confronted by a character who introduced himself as Mark P. I think this is Mara Gillespie's fraud of a husband of no religious legitimacy and his posse in the back of the hostel. He said, "Welcome to Loveland. You've got about $20 worth of tobacco in your pocket. Whose side do you want to be on?" A stranger in a different city, in a different state, told me the contents of my pockets. I will find justice for this felony interaction. Rights violations hurt people. And these schizophrenic scenarios fucked me up very badly. I was lured to the Lucky You Hotel and attempted murder the next day again. I was given a big 7-gram bag of free, quote, meth, end quote, by a stranger who just smiled at me. That's a lot. I walked to Union Station and flushed it down the toilet. While walking on the 16th Street Outdoor Mall, a stranger walked up to me and said, "God must be with you." I ran out of money and wound up at the Salvation Army shelter. I walked in and a federal spook said, You're either really brave or really stupid." I instantly turned around and left. I went to the Denver Rescue Mission and enrolled in their, quote, sobriety program, end quote, in exchange for a place to stay. I could smoke weed and drink after the 8 hours of work in the kitchen I was required to do each day, which I did for 3 months. I was harassed by dozens of CIs at this shelter. Once you enter a shelter, they run your name and ID through a federal database. See On Contact, Surveillance of the Poor. So, every agency in the country is alerted of your whereabouts instantaneously with real-time and real-life consequences. I kept getting harassed and entrapped by state actors who infiltrated the homeless shelter. Tax money well spent. I eventually had a nervous breakdown and called the police on myself for help. They took me to the Denver hospital where a psychopathic nurse abused me, and then they took me to jail for felony criminal mischief. At least a dozen CIs infiltrated the Denver County Jail during the 6 months I spent there. One told me, "It's the Order of the Snake, which is just another cult. We live in a cult-ridden society." CIs include Wesley White, Vinny Machuli, Brandon Ruiz, among several others. Very long story short. CI Brandon Ruiz gave me the address of a front house to stay at upon my release, 905 Ogden Street, Denver, Colorado. I threatened to take my case to trial, so after half a year they reduced the charges to legal fiction misdemeanor 1, criminal mischief, and I was out. I went to the front house. It was wired up with hidden cameras just like on To Catch a Predator, exactly like all of the front houses I was lured to in Nebraska and Iowa and Texas. Only this time they told me when I got there that there were security cameras everywhere. A very beautiful woman attempted to seduce me. She's not Mara, so I declined. This was in the basement. I went back upstairs. Another girl was watching CCTV on the television in the living room. She said, "What are you, a faggot?" Then she made reference to the Goldilocks incident alone in my college dorm, which got me expelled from college. It fucked my head up. I just left and never came back to a free house to live in full of hot women. I am not a violent person, but in retrospect, I should have done something. 2018. I decided to migrate to Boulder, Colorado. I lived out of a 5x5 storage unit. I bought a monthly bus pass. I subscribed to 24-hour fitness gym to take showers. I had another $300 influx of money, so that is where that went. My parents assumed that I was on a drug and alcohol-fueled, quote, rampage, end quote, across the country, which simply was not true. I had no resources, no connections. I smoked weed and drank beer here and there, nothing major. Anyways, I was surveilled and followed and harassed and befriended and betrayed and lured to another wired-up front house by CIs Dylan Thompson and Kevin Feinberg. This is the theme and reoccurring pattern, okay? And by this point, I am quite privy, so I just let them come into my world, pal around with them, get their real names, get their addresses if I can. I am doing my own counterintelligence operation now. I call it tunneling. I am building my own case, observing felony fact patterns, etc. This is a component of Google's illicit social credit system abuse of targeted individuals in the United States. See China's social credit system. My parents came out to visit me. They decided I should go to rehab again. I had no qualms with this. I was never homeless, I just didn't have a house, and I was never lost, for I had no destination. There is a difference, for the record. I am quite certain that Google rerouted search queries into rehabs and funneled/channeled me to North Star Transitions in Boulder, Colorado. This is how AI and government social credit systems work as far as entrapment aspects. I was told by a stranger in Denver, Google is programming you, stereotypical inferences. I am skipping a lot of encounters with confidential informants and zealots from the cult teen challenge rehab. One bitch at a bus stop told me, "We'll lock you in a church." A violent version of me would have attacked these multiple dozens of strangers violating my rights across the country for years in a row. But I am not violent by design. Another example was a stranger asked to use my cell phone at an IHOP. My mother had mailed me a phone. Come to find out, he went straight to, quote, find my device, end quote, and linked Gmail accounts. Another phone hacked. My location and safety compromised and exploited. He didn't even make a phone call. A normal person would have beat him to the floor, but mind you, I am tunneling, observing the criminal state's tactics of surveillance and disruption with a near photographic memory. I do not forgive, I do not forget. So I agree to go to North Star Transitions. A considerable section of my first book is dedicated to the lawsuit I filed against them that I won't reiterate entirely here. It was another front house / entrapment house or smart home / aware home. They knew who I was before I got there. The president, the resident psychiatrist, the counselors, the staff, even some of the other patients and clientele are named in my lawsuit as unknown members of the Gillespie Family Network, who I remind you are well connected in the community, according to CI in Douglas County Jail 2016. My private sessions were recorded, much like the case of Daniel Ellsberg, where the FBI broke into his psychiatrist's office to try to find psychosexual secrets in an effort to discredit him. I was asked, "What's your favorite kind of porn?" among other inappropriate questions. One client said, "What's with you and your vendetta?" And another said, "Why don't you find a girl who likes Nader?" During a group session, I spoke of being pistol whipped, and Counselor Tuesday just smiled and almost started laughing. On 2 occasions, Counselor Tuesday looked at focal points / hidden cameras on the wall, and she said to me, "Why don't you do a dance for him, once in the living room and once out back?" I assume for the feds and the Gillespies. We will find out in court. Many of these people from Douglas County Jail to North Star transitions are related by 6 degrees of separation, and in some cases directly related by blood, as with some of the members of the Oxford House in Colorado Springs that I went to after 60 days of rights violations and humiliations at North Star transitions. One Italian resident of Colorado Springs Oxford House blurted out, "What if there were hidden cameras in this house?" Logan Jewell. Another resident blurted out, "Monogamy's a thing of the past, man." Kyle Jones. I'm cold with these names and dates and addresses, so don't fuck with me or play the brain game, because I will win. These are now my targeted individuals slated for Gestapo-style interrogation if we can't settle this like civilized Anglo-Saxons in a court of law. Remember, these motherfuckers tried to murder me relentlessly across multiple state lines and film me naked and hack my devices, okay? Big no-nos. I survived. See Cape Fear, destitute. Keep in mind, the criminal Christian sector of this fully corrupted government is convinced that I am a drug-dealing domestic terrorist. I was framed for a phone call to Mara while she was all alone in a bar in New York late at night. How convenient. Keep in mind, I am under investigation for felony stalking and have been verbally served with a do not apprehend warrant by confidential informant Gabriel Mattingly. Anything goes on the war on terrorism. The Constitution has been usurped and is vandalized daily. I am a victim of the times. Back to North Star transitions. During a private counseling session, Counselor David asked, "Do you feel entitled to her?" And during another session, he said, "You're not ready to be king yet." Now, I never mentioned Mara to anyone, ever. Counselor Tuesday said, "Just let it go" about her. The resident psychiatrist Charles Schumann introduced himself to me with, "Are you done yet?" referring to Mara. And then he asked in a low spook voice, "What's your philosophy?" as if certain beliefs are illegal. He misdiagnosed me paranoid delusional schizophrenic based on nothing and stated that I, quote, "refused risperidol for my delusions," end quote. This is a rare glimpse of the deep state attempting to cover their tracks by discrediting me as a physical witness of an illegal weapon signal outside the range of the human eye's visual light spectrum emitted from a cellular tower and satellite-coordinated stealth weapon system targeting innocent citizen civilians, which constitutes a terrorist act against the population. I caught them poisoning me and my family on video, and the police/feds sped by and deleted it and destroyed my phone within minutes of recording. I was then framed and blackmailed and psychologically tortured in solitary confinement, and then asked my non-existent security clearance, and was attempted murdered in 3 different states a half a dozen times that I'm aware of across the country for years in a row. So they had me misdiagnosed paranoid delusional schizophrenic at North Star transitions in order to assassinate my character, which was extremely infuriating and frustrating until it helped save me from 25 years in prison for multiple shootings in 2020, but I'll get to that later. On Family Day, my parents showed up at North Star transitions. This was shortly after I was asked to present my autobiography in 20 minutes and failed. My mother took me to the backyard and sat me down and said, "Mara told me she can't be your friend and doesn't care if you're a genius, and that she doesn't want your drama, and she didn't know a dance would do that to you, and you don't know what love is." Apparently they were communicating. All of this concerns me, and yet they never include me. My shootings were avoidable had there not been a failure to communicate. Look, rights violations hurt people. I was framed for a phone call and denied due process of law and stereotyped a stalker and attacked for it. I was never given the opportunity to clear my Aryan name. As far as I'm concerned, they hurt an innocent suicidal trauma victim and made a mockery of the sacrament of marriage. Mara's illegitimate husband violated my rights in my own home and felony mind-fucked me and tried to have me murdered in Denver after trying and failing to have me jumped and imprisoned in Nebraska. The truth always comes out. The truth always comes out. My shootings were as preventable as the vaccine injuries my family and I and others in my generation sustained. Americans truly are a bizarre, narcissistic, greedy, hedonistic, selfish, retarded, functionally illiterate, evil capitalist bunch of exploitive, unfaithful, virtueless, violent, coward motherfuckers who desecrate the sacred for sport and violate the rights of innocence. Rights violations hurt people. I never consented to my devices being hacked or being feloniously spied upon without a judicial warrant approved by a magistrate stating exactly that which is to be searched or seized. I do not consent. But anyways, long story short, North Star Transitions offered me 3 choices of Oxford houses on a computer screen to choose from. After the Gillespie family illegally screened me and decided that they did not like the psychologically crippled, death-dodging trauma survivor with a fucked-up haircut on CCTV. I told Counselor David, I don't give a fuck. Colorado Springs, and another city. Again, the government social credit system and AI at work. All options were almost certainly smart homes like the dozen I had been lured to in a 4-year string. Felony fact pattern established. I randomly picked Colorado Springs, a new city. I got a job at Helping Hands Moving Company down the street from the Oxford house that was compromised. One day during lunch break, a co-worker, C.I. Kiwan, said to me, "Don't worry about your online debauchery. Just lay low, man. Live your life." I had threatened to take North Star Transitions resident psychiatrist to court and scared the fuck out of him and all the voyeurs violating HIPAA law during my private psychiatry sessions, which were being feloniously monitored. After 30 or 40 setups, entrapments, assaults, robberies, and worse, you really get a feel for them. Soon my car was burglarized. An empty book of matches with a skull on it indicating a hit was left beneath my driver's side floor mat, the exact same one left in my bedroom of my childhood home in 2016, a calling card. Then my storage unit was burglarized in Colorado Springs, in a new city where I knew no one. The harassment, intimidation, infiltration, setups, and rights violations never stopped. I got a job as a delivery driver. I did that for a couple of years. Someone got really close to stealing my white 98 Honda Prelude when I first started. I would leave the car running. Some punk was 5 feet from my driver's side door when I popped around the corner and scared him a bit. I was jacked up and physically fit. He looked like a heroin junkie / opiate addict. He just smiled and said, "Nice ride." I didn't say anything. A normal person would have confronted or attacked him. I've been in so many state-sponsored setups and entrapment scenarios it is hard to tell if this was one of them. Who knows? It could have been random. I began arming myself legally, for the most part. First, I bought a Smith & Wesson Border Guard military knife at a pawn shop for $14, and it was not the legal blade length for a civilian. The best knife I've ever owned. I still have it. Then I bought a Smith & Wesson nightstick at an Army surplus store for $50. That was probably illegal in retrospect. Then I bought a Taurus 38 special snub-nosed pistol legally with the best bullets they had for around $250, brand new. Then I bought a used Smith & Wesson military and police issue .40 caliber pistol with 3 15-round magazines and the most expensive hollow points they had for $300+ legally. I felt much safer then, but it did not save me from state repression. Like I said, they burglarized my vehicle and left their calling card in it, and then burglarized my storage unit and stole my piano keyboard. After a year of sober living at the Oxford house, I moved out. I was searching for rooms on Craigslist to rent when I got a random phone call from Kipper Dorn. He said, quote, "Hey, do you want to live with my crazy dad? You can smoke and drink and bring bitches over," end quote. Now, I had seen this ad for this place on Craigslist because it was in my price range of $500 a month with no deposit, but I never applied, yet I received a call for it, which was very strange. I decided to check it out. Tipper's crazy dad turned out to be an ultra-right-wing ex-military government spook, obese, diabetic. He pretended he was basically immobilized. I caught him speeding around the kitchen one night. He wasn't couch or bedridden at all. Anyways, this was just another front house. The military has been running game on me since 2014 and hardcore since February 2016. This is full-spectrum dominance. I saw a man on a cell phone plant a bug/sensor on the back bumper of my uncle's car in my driveway through the living room window, terrified, alone with my dogs in 2016 at my parents' house. I wish I would have chased him down with the baseball bat I keep right outside the garage door. I should have ran up on him barefoot and beat the fuck out of him, but I was scared and nonviolent. I saw, also with my eyeballs, an endoscope snake camera peek up at me through my bedroom floor vent. Once it saw me looking at it, it ripped back down, making a horrible noise of metal being pulled across the vent grate. This was around the same time my childhood home was broken into in 2016. So, that's the police/feds/military running game on an innocent, confused, suicidal civilian. Americans are notorious for preying on the innocent and the defenseless, the most vulnerable. Think native genocide, slavery, war. In these situations, you have the all-powerful and the powerless, and virtually nothing in between. The American character. One day in Colorado Springs in 2018/2019 at the Dorn residence, Clifford Dorn, the crazy dad, said to me out of the blue, "Her husband just might kick your ass." Bitch, I wish you would. I'm ready for that motherfucker. I didn't respond. Clifford Dorn would occasionally chastise me for being raised Catholic. Information I never disclosed to anyone anywhere ever. Remember, this is the criminal Christian right doing this to me. They are tax-exempt, concentrated wealth and power. See American Fascists, the Christian right, and the war on America. Long story short, I eventually moved out and was directed via, quote, Craigslist, end quote, to another front house. First of all, the military and the government control the internet, which is literally a military innovation eventually opened decades later to the public in the 1990s. And on fully hacked and remote-controlled devices, it is more like intranet than the actual internet. It's a closed loop. I must say, right before I left the Dorns, look-alike CGI pornography of Mara appeared on my laptop that I am no longer the administrator of, exactly like in my college dorm in 2014. It didn't get a rise out of me. SwapMyWife.com is what it was. I still have this hacked laptop and video of a girl getting fucked whose face morphs into Mara's. Quite convincing, except her titties are too small. Nice try, motherfucker. Anyways, I moved to another smart home or aware home. After some time, the Magic Muffin porn channel appeared on my compromised cell phone. This one is real. That's Mara. It never shows her face, but that's her channel, all right. I consider myself the moral authority, and I happen to truly love that girl since braces, and I do not approve of her being sexually exploited for profit on the internet. I don't care about free agency or exhibitionism or view it as a form of female liberation or empowerment. It is the objectification and commodification of the human body, of the sacred. Okay? No, not okay. Mahatma Gandhi named 7 deadly social sins. One is pleasure without conscience, sport fucking, adultery, polygamy, pornography, etc. And another is worship without sacrifice. Your body is your temple. These are the 7 deadly social sins that can get you killed or your house shut up. I don't blame Mara. I know the pressures females go through and the indoctrination. I blame the cult of the self, the cult of celebrity worship, capitalism itself, the corporatization of childhood, the corporatization of academia, the pornification of society, her parents, and most of all, this Mark P. character who was the intended target. But I can't find that motherfucker. So when I psychologically collapsed in 2020, I misdirected that inchoate rage and hate and confusion and trauma and so on through the front door of Mara's parents' house. Turns out they moved some years ago. Doesn't quite fit the stalker narrative. I never did anything wrong to anyone anywhere ever, basically. The American experience. Long story short, I was tired of being abused like a rag doll up and down this evil criminal country, and I finally returned to my childhood home that I no longer feel safe in. My soul dog child, Winston, was so happy that I finally came home. Winston got his boy back for 4 months in 2020. He got Cushing's disease in 2018. He was sick and skinny and losing teeth. I was harassed at a gas station by the same state actor who lured me to the Lucky You Hotel in Denver and harassed me in Colorado Springs. This was the straw that broke my fucking back. The government abuse just won't stop. I lost control. I shot an empty Bellevue police cruiser down the street from my home for beaming my family's house in 2016 and for speeding by and destroying the physical video evidence. I emptied a pistol through the front door of the Gillespie residence for wasting my time in my life and my entire youth, and for desecrating the sacred, and for making a mockery of the sacrament of marriage, and for abusing their connections in the community and having my rights violated at an institutional level, and for felony mind-fucking me, and for accusing and attacking me for a phone call I never made, and for denying me the right of reply to clear my Aryan name, and so on. Trying to have me jumped, trying to have me in prison, trying to have me murdered by blacks like a coward American fuck. I don't give a fuck what you think or how you feel or what you believe. Civilians don't know shit, and Americans are at best passive consumers of information with enough numerical literacy to operate a cash register or stock shelves somewhere. As for the professions, the corporate state writes the curriculum just as they write and lobby legislation into law. The legal profession has remained silent post 9/11. There is no privacy in the post-constitutional era of the digital age. From the Patriot Act to Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act, the legal profession has been criminally negligent in upholding the rule of law. From warrantless military mass surveillance to psychological and physical torture programs, the medical profession has become weaponized. Any complaint of the aforementioned gets one reflexively misdiagnosed, paranoid, delusional, schizophrenic by design. This is the medical professional's role, to enable the abuses of power of the criminal state to continue unimpeded. So I decided to do something about it. I felt I was in immediate danger, and I made the best decision insofar as I could determine it. Shots fired. That's what guns are for. I am not insane. I was deliberately driven mad. I immediately recovered, having finally reached safety at the LRC without the use of medication. I do not hallucinate. I do not hear voices. I do not talk to myself, nor do I pretend to. They say I harbor substance-induced delusions. I have no drug charges. There exists no physical record supporting that claim. However, this misdiagnosis kept me out of maximum security prison for 25 years. Malpractice saved my life. Serendipity. My being mismedicated with Invega and Cogentin are styles of violence and psychotropic assault, and my being misdiagnosed schizophrenic is a form of de facto character assassination. The Lincoln Regional Center is simply an extension of state repression and a continuum, as the LRC is a state instrumentality acting in tandem with the criminal state itself. Be that as it may, I am still grateful to be here as I am, after fiercely advocating for myself, properly medicated and stable now, and am doing better than ever. I spend my time here very wisely. It is April 2024, and I am still here. All I do is write and read like a monk in a monastery taking a sabbatical. I never watch television or listen to the radio or read American newspapers or video games. I am a very serious person, and I expect to be taken very seriously. It is important that one never be diverted or distracted by the superficial, insignificant things of life, such as fashionable consumption, trivia, entertainment, and so on. What really matters is a continued effort to develop and organize active, dedicated, popular movements that will continue to struggle constantly for what has to be done, which is precisely what I have been doing in my own way since 2009. And the security and surveillance state knows this, and they assailed me for it. They know who to target. See Ralph Nader, how he came to write unsafe at any speed. I would like to take this time to testify as to the cruel and unusual, radically illegal methods and techniques of the criminal state in attempting to silence my legitimate voice of dissent. I wrote about them at length in my first book, but wish to mention some important facts and details here. Waves of confidential informants, state actors, and Christian terrorists were sent into Douglas County Jail to infiltrate my cells. They rotated me from jail cell to jail cell into different housing units a lot. Upon my arrival, an informant just smiled at me and said, Now you're a terrorist. The basic modus operandi is that the FBI solves terrorism plots they created. This is July 2020 to April 2021. Most notably are CI's Bobby Nemeth, Andre Williams, and Derek Tyler. CI Bobby Nemeth, a.k.a. Neck, of Click Life Gang, was planted in my cell first. He eventually broke character when I said, "They're all informants." He responded in a cop voice, "Why'd you start using drugs, Dylan?" I replied, "Over a girl named Mara." And then I said, "How long can the government fuck with an innocent person for no legitimate reason?" He laughed and said, "Forever if they think you're a domestic terrorist." And then I said, "And what exactly does a domestic terrorist look like?" And he replied, "An intellectual criminal with a vendetta like you." And I said, "Wouldn't a domestic terrorist be someone running felony surveillance and luring somebody to houses and filming them naked without their knowledge or consent and attempting to murder an innocent American citizen civilian on U.S. domestic soil?" He then said, "If they can't assassinate you, they'll assassinate your character." Then he was moved to a different mod or released. I don't know. Then they sent in Andre Williams, a complete sociopathic, born-again cult freak spook motherfucker who is a closet homosexual who struggles with same-sex attraction, who was shot 14 times and survived. He is a stone-cold killer. Right when he entered my cell, he asked, "What's BDSM?" I answered, "It is bondage and submission." Then he said, "They think you're a domestic terrorist." I said, "I know." He then said, "Facebook and Google are terrorist organizations." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "I know." Just to fill in the blanks, I used to binge watch BDSM at kink.com for many years, and even more hardcore German pornography. I noticed that Google directed me to X videos every time, and I am certain that with a little digging we will discover that this website is owned by the criminal Christian right, who are recording users without their knowledge or consent and running facial recognition algorithms to attempt to determine who is a faggot in order to target them for surveillance and disruption and attack them with a cellular tower and satellite coordinated stealth weapon system, just as they are targeting activists, environmentalists, feminists, homosexuals, transgenders, Muslims, radical intellectuals, secular fundamentalists, potential leaders such as myself, and so on. There is a very long list of people they hate and condemn as terrorists or demons or whatever the fuck justifies a violation of the commandments in their retarded, backwards, criminal Christian brains. These are ultra-right-wing selective literalists hermetically sealed in a dominionist cult. They are extremely dangerous. Back to Andre Williams. We got on the topic of the illegal weapon signal I recorded. He asked, "How'd you know to do that?" I didn't have an answer for him. I have supreme intuition. Long story short, he attempted to murder me in jail with a hot shot of poison K2. It was not K2. I smoked the tiny white square of paper. Andre Williams said, "Do you feel that creeping to the back of your brain?" I did. It felt like a cold breeze in my head. He expected me to drop dead. His smile slowly faded and he said, "It's just like Kingsman," which apparently is an American propaganda film about training and sending young adults on government kill missions. CI Andre Williams left my cell and made a phone call. Then I was transferred from Gmod on the old side of the jail to Mod 14 on the new side of the jail. They put me in the only cell in a blind spot where the cameras can't see. Again, how convenient. Carl Booth was my cellmate and a witness who can attest to everything I am about to tell you about CI Derek Tyler. CI Derek Tyler, also black, is an ex-military Marine combat veteran and ex-crackhead who found the evil version of Jesus worshipped by all my criminal Christian right assailants. He was sent into Carl and I's two-man cell to sleep on the floor, which was odd, considering there was ample space in some of the other 30 two-man cells on the mod, which had the capacity to hold 60 inmates. Small world. Derek Tyler claimed to be a meth cook and gave me him and his 92-year-old mother's address, 3805 Bedford Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, and urged me to come over once I am free. I've been lured to so many motherfucking front houses I might show up wearing a pen camera and my father with a pistol, fucking spook. Anyway, CI Derek Tyler tampered with me as a physical witness to war crimes, and he coerced me and ordered me not to plead insanity and to just take the criminal charges. One of the first things he said to me was, Only tell the hospital bits and pieces of what the government did to you. Don't tell them everything or your family will perish. Divine consequences. There was a long silence. This spook just threatened my white family's life. He said that what I witnessed wasn't just targeting me, but was for depopulation in general. The United States government is running, through the multi-hundred-billion-dollar supranational corporate entity Google, an illicit social credit system on the entire population, exactly like China, which includes depopulation protocols. It's no secret. See China's social credit system. I literally said, quote, Google is running a social credit system exactly like China, end quote. Derek Tyler responded by saying, the average person doesn't know that. C6, SICX, not your average. I am not your average person, motherfucker. Google and Facebook are surveillance companies who employ over 10,000 ex-military, independent, mercenary private contractors. These people destroy activist lives for sport. Google and Facebook are also by now wholly owned subsidiaries of the FBI who function as the national political police. Derek Tyler half laughed and said to me, these guys have been doing this for decades. It is important to note that Facebook runs radicalism algorithms on all of its unwitting users who unintentionally consent by pressing the I agree, legally binding click-on contracts of adhesion with compulsory arbitration clauses embedded within them, which lock you out of court. My being a responsible public citizen over a public Facebook page, along with my pornographic proclivities and Google search activity, got me red flagged and singled out. A TI, or targeted individual, a high-profile target, a person of interest. I wrote all about CI Derek Tyler in my book. Before he left my cell after a few days, he pressed his forehead against mine and said intensely, it's just like a kill campaign. If you don't kill, they'll kill you. I will never forget the look he gave me as he left. He knew he was fucked. So at great personal risk to my and my family's life, I went ahead and wrote a book about all of the events that transpired, only to be mocked and dismissed and discredited paranoid, delusional, schizophrenic in an assembly line fashion. For now, the truth always comes out, often too late. However, I am confident and refuse to be discouraged or overwhelmed. I will continue to tell the truth insofar as I can determine it, and I shall hold steadfast and celibate, patient, long-suffering until I clear my Aryan name with Miss Mara. You can't stop it. You can stop it if you can. Just keep chipping away at that monolithic edifice. Keep banging on that door and eventually it will open. See Lil Bing hit him, SD. As William Cooper pointed out in his book, Behold a Pale Horse, the government and the military of many countries are controlled by the Brotherhood of the Dragon or the Brotherhood of the Snake. For more information on the Order of the Snake, read the section of my book titled Letters from My Dark Web Hitman. Abdul Alim Arthur is a sociopath with psychopathic tendencies and a serial rapist, serial killer who was hired to kill me by a character in a higher social strata named Brenda Stenson, who is close with Senator Pete Ricketts and probably our new governor, Jim Pillen. Abdul Arthur defected and left the freelance business and converted his life to Allah. He is a half-black and half-Iranian terrorist who beat a murder case as a juvenile and did 5 years for stabbings. He is currently serving 35 to 45 years at NSP, Nebraska State Penitentiary, for 2 counts of statutory rape, sexual assault on a minor. He played crazy and got to the Lincoln Regional Center with me. He avoided me at first. We eventually became close. He confessed everything to me. There is an entire section of my book designated to him. He writes me from prison. We are pen pals. He said, you were my mark, and now you are my only friend. He also wrote repeatedly that it was just business and that he was in the business and that it was never personal and that he does not want to hurt me in any way now. He stated that he has an entire dossier on me. Pictures, videos, social security numbers. It is one of the few possessions I have, he said. He told me he spent around $20,000 hunting me since 2016. He wasted $2,000 on his person at the DMV just to find out that I had no driver's license. He spent money on rental cars, logistics, hackers, weapons, and women to seduce me. I lost him when I skipped town to Denver. He got a call saying, do you know where your prey is at, and where's your prey? He said he met up with Mark P. and his posse and told me he will help me get justice He used the word revenge. Abdul said, "We don't even need to find Mark P. He will come to us if we set a trap." My brain does not think that way, as I am not predatory, but he is probably right. Anyways, he told me that he almost shot me with a 30-06 sniper rifle from a rooftop in Denver, downtown Denver, but some fat bitch wouldn't get out of the way. All I did was wander around Texas and Colorado. I was really PTSD pacing just in a straight line, power walking nowhere, all day, every day. I was an easy target. Abdul told me the hit on my life was for $150,000. Quote, "That's the price for a lieutenant in any cartel, man. You was making moves on the chessboard without knowing what your actions was saying," end quote. He said that the heat should be off unless I turn it back on by, quote, "researching, posting, and triggering shit," end quote. One random anonymous CI in Douglas County Jail 2020 told me this is all happening to me because I, quote, "built a persona on the internet," end quote, and for, quote, "waking people up," end quote. Abdul's own cousin, Terrence Moore, a.k.a. Two Feathers /T Street /TZ, was here with me at the LRC in 2023 after Abdul was sentenced and left. Terrence Moore just finished serving 9 years in federal prison for possessing 5 pistols and a quarter pound of crack. He was here for competency evaluation briefly for some petty misdemeanor, but TZ confirmed that his cousin is pure evil and a, quote, "dark web scammer," end quote. Two Feathers said, quote, "Abdul's the devil," end quote, and that he can't kick it with him or bring females around because he always tries to rape them. T Streets assured me that, quote, "Abdul is who he says he is, and that he loves knives and breaking into windows and robbing houses at gunpoint and raping bitches and doing drugs and all that shit," end quote. Terrence was glad to hear that his cousin is making an effort to change his ways. I am very lucky to be alive. The devotion of my youth has earned me divine favor with the Lord. I am not schizophrenic. I am the victim of the nationwide phenomenon known as gang stalking, which appears to be the latest version of MK Ultra and COINTELPRO. I am the victim of a nationwide campaign of hatred against me. I am the victim of a multi-state coordinated felony crime ring and a conspiracy to commit murder. I am the victim of a state censorship, state repression, and state-sponsored Christian terrorism. I am the victim of Facebook's radicalism algorithms. I am the victim of Google's social credit system abuse. I am the victim of Teen Challenge Rehab. See Teen Challenge Warning. I am the victim of the security and surveillance state. See Chris Hedges' Snowden debate, Oxford Union. The truth always comes out, but often too late. However, in my case, every worst-case scenario possible has already manifested itself into physical reality. For instance, the Magic Muffin porn channel and the Italian pornography have been placed onto my compromised devices. Felony mindfucks, I call them. One inmate in Douglas County Jail blurted out randomly, "Why do you care if she makes porn?" I didn't answer, because I happen to truly sacramentally love that girl since childhood. That's why, motherfucker. Every area of my life has been infiltrated at every level, from schools, rehabs, jails, psych wards, hospitals, the workplace, Oxford houses, homeless shelters, by state actors, confidential informants, and agent provocateurs, all institutions. My home has been broken into and bugged. So have my family's cars. There are other nanotechnologies, including neural implants, also known as the mark of the beast, that I find wise not to mention here, as they may seem prima facie fantastical. However, all of these technologies exist. It's no secret. Facebook and Google are developing a digital biological mental perceptual interface controlled by AI, connecting human brains to computers using nanotechnology courtesy of the Neuralink company. There are other companies with this capacity. Anything goes in the private sector. If you can think of it, they are probably already doing it, and if you can afford to pay for it, then you can do it too. This is a world that George Orwell could not have concocted, and we are living in it. See Noam Chomsky, Terrorism, Secrecy, and Google 2013. See Noam Chomsky, Black Panther. See Vice News, What It Takes to Be a Rebel in Modern Times. See Thomas Paine, Book TV 2014. So far LRC, I have had a handful of infiltrators approach me. CI Jamel Hudson, who laughed and said, "What was it like when they MK Ultra'd you?" CI Tyler Millard, a.k.a. Tarzan of Click Life Gang, was here briefly. He told me that Bobby Nemeth would shoot me. He also said, "If you choose to be a domestic terrorist, then I am just fulfilling my patriotic duty." Another patient walking behind me said, "Nader, should I snap his neck now?" CI Joshua Haas followed me from Douglas County Jail, where he pretended to be crazy to get to the LRC. He was normal when he confronted me. He said, "What, did you just have a nervous breakdown?" I said, "Yeah." And then he said, "OPD works with Homeland Security. They play dirty. I probably shouldn't say too much." All of these characters, state actors, were here for an extremely short amount of time. I am still grateful to be here and feel safer than ever. I don't think that the LRC can in any way be held responsible for the actions of infiltrators. However, just because a medical professional acted reasonably does not exempt them from liability. And if you can determine predictable outcomes, you can use that as evidence for intent in a court of law. Doctors make mistakes all the time. That's why they need all that malpractice insurance. I contend that I am in no way permanently mentally ill, with the exception of severe PTSD consistent with psychological torture. I was found NRRI, or not responsible for reasons of insanity, for my little shooting spree. With that, I have been reduced to a second-class citizen and limited strictly in what I can say and do. I am also restricted to the state of Nebraska for now. I am confident that I will find an attorney to champion my cause. I shall prove enough elements to nudge my claims from the possible to the probable and clear my Aryan name. I have also attached a bounty to my manuscript to incentivize defectors to come forward on my behalf. It is futile to attempt to appeal to the conscience of these people. They do not have one. So activate the greed gene. Quote, 20% of any final settlement goes to anyone who helps Dylan Thomas find justice, end quote. Reality asserts itself. See, radical movements keep this country honest, plus question and answer. To conclude, I used to say, dreams do not come true and good things do not come to those who wait, and true love does not conquer all, and your God does not exist. However, I have since changed my tune because dreams do come true, and true love does conquer space and time, and there is a creator. I still don't know if good things come to those that wait. I'm still waiting. See Centrifugal Molecules. This will take you to my Electronica channel, where I have 80 out of hundreds of instrumentals uploaded. See Dylan Thomas Radical Movement. This will take you to my piano channel. It says a prayer for Mara in the description. General information regarding the nationwide phenomenon known as gang stalking. 1. The intent seems to be to discredit and silence voices of dissent by using sophisticated technologies and psychological torture techniques and forcing targeted individuals into very schizophrenic scenarios and ultimately forcing suicides or channeling victims into the mental health sector. 2. It is a federal endeavor, possibly global. There have been no official leaks regarding this matter yet that I am aware of. 3. The government pays or otherwise incentivizes members of the underclass/criminal class to run warrantless surveillance and commit acts of harassment, physical and electronic. They go as far as assault, robbery, blackmail, framing, burglary, character assassination, and attempted murder and assassination. They deploy informants to infiltrate all areas of life at every level, i.e. schools, workplace, rehab, psych wards, hospitals, jails, prisons, homeless shelters, etc. 4. They deploy/employ mostly blacks and opiate addicts and far-right fanatic Christian fundamentalists of various sects, evangelicals, dominionists, Southern Baptists. These are cults. Freak motherfuckers that they probably don't even have to pay. They are zealots who will assail those condemned as demons or possessed on purely ideological grounds. They call themselves demon hunters and are associated with the cult Teen Challenge Rehab, which spread to 70 countries. 5. Google and Facebook are surveillance companies and terrorist organizations who employ over 10,000 ex-military, independent, private mercenary contractors who destroy activists' lives for sport and for money. The FBI/CIA view Facebook and Google as one of the richest environments for personal data and location. Google is running an illicit social credit system. Facebook runs radicalism algorithms on all its users. The CIA created Google Earth and Google Street View and Google Eagle Eye. Okay, gang stalking. See gang stalking on the news. See Vice News, the nightmare world of gang stalking. Gang stalking appears to be the latest version of MKUltra and COINTELPRO. It is a psychological torture program. All countries have security forces and secret police. It is Homeland Security filling its own lexicon, according to a low-level gang stalker in Douglas County Jail 2021. The federal government pays or otherwise incentivizes mostly members of the underclass to act as confidential informants and agent provocateurs. The very term gang stalking carries with it conspiratorial connotations which further discredits its victims when they complain about it. The Illuminati/military/government are pretty fucking clever and very, very sneaky. This is a military psyop or a psychological operation, once openly called mind war. They use a myriad of military technologies and psychological torture techniques in a process called gaslighting to drive the targeted individual mad. They run warrantless surveillance, bug homes and cars, commit physical and electronic harassment, hack and remote control devices, including smart TVs, which are one-way mirrors, obtain blackmail material, assassinate your character, and in some cases attempt to murder you, all of which is geared towards forcing suicides and inciting violence. They have unreal technologies, arguably alien. Nanofiber optics, neural implants, nanomites, V2K, or voice-to-skull, which is straight out of DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, cellular tower telepathy, weaponized satellites, illegal weapon signals. Psychological torture I experienced. 1. Being framed for a single-sentence stalker phone call which resulted in a restraining order. 2. Having look-alike pornography of a loved one placed on my hacked devices which caused a nervous breakdown that got me disowned by my uncle Greg Thomas, MD, and banned from student housing and virtually expelled from Iowa Western Community College. After they Thorazine me at the psych ward, I was thrown into student loan debt, my life sabotaged. 3. Confidential informant Dakota Ohm, planted at my place of work at Omaha Steaks, legitimately befriended me and confessed, quote, "You know the police are watching you in your room, right?" End quote. No one is allowed to see me naked or fucking touch me. I am a celibate Jesuit-type being. So, I was eyeball raped by men in my childhood home while changing my clothes and etc. 4. I locked my front door and it unlocked itself, a tactic for robbing the victim of any sense of security in their own home. It is probably not magic, but technology doing that. 5. I have had strangers tell me things I did in private alone, or say quotes from private conversations I had in confidence with others. 6. A stranger in a new city in a new state told me the contents of my pockets. 7. A stranger in a new city in a new state told me Google is programming you, stereotypical inferences. 8. Disturbing content was placed onto my smart TV, phone, desktop, laptop repeatedly. The dark arts of the security and surveillance state. Now, MKUltra, or Mind Control Ultra, is another clandestine military psyop. The military is constantly running hundreds of radically illegal programs on civilians at any given time. I know little about MKUltra. I know they were caught dosing soldiers and civilians with LSD without their knowledge or consent. There were probably other drugs involved. Inputs or suggestions were probably introduced in a Stanley Milgram-style unethical observational human experiment. Now, COINTELPRO, or Counterintelligence Program. First of all, this is a matter of public record. COINTELPRO was exposed in the courts. It ran through 4 presidential administrations from the 1950s to the 1970s through today. The FBI is a criminogenic organization and functions as the national political police. See Noam Chomsky, Black Panthers. It was a concerted effort to destroy all critical thought and movement. They targeted virtually the entire left, civil rights, women's rights, labor unions, anti-war movements, activist groups, and targeted individuals, indigenous groups, and so on. Much like gang stalking of today,
They said, and I quote, "We want to instill an atmosphere of paranoia and make everyone think that there is an FBI agent behind every mailbox," unquote. They used confidential informants to infiltrate affinity groups. They wrote fake letters attempting to incite violence between the Black Panthers and the rival gang called the Blackstone Rangers. The FBI tried very hard to have Fred Hampton, a 23-year-old Black Panther organizer, killed. Fred was building a poor people's movement and was speaking to white supremacists and Nazis audiences who were applauding him. So the FBI sent fake police reports to the Chicago police saying that there were guns in Fred's apartment. Fred's own personal bodyguard was a federal informant. The police burst in and murdered Fred Hampton in his sleep. He was probably drugged in a straight Gestapo-style political assassination. Of course, the media and the police lied, as they do today, but it finally came out in court, so no more Black Panthers. The basic modus operandi is that the FBI solves terrorism plots that they created. I come from a hyper-militarized fiefdom between Offutt Air Force Base and STRATCOM, or Strategic Air Command, called Sarpy County. The Sarpy County Sheriff's Department and the Bellevue Police Department each receive millions of dollars annually from the DOD, or Department of Defense, to quell the military housing population, who are often violent drunks who suffer from PTSD. Anyways, these hyper-militarized police forces are equipped with state-of-the-art technology, and they run warrantless felony surveillance on the local civilian population. I happen to know. They are notoriously racist also. People from neighboring areas such as Omaha often will literally not cross that Sarpy County line, and for good reason. There is no public transportation in Bellevue, therefore there really are no poor people. They've been gentrified. I thought it was just the local police fucking with me for years, but then there were incidents in Iowa, and then all over Texas, and all over Colorado. Then I realized, fuck, this is a federal endeavor crossing multiple state lines in what can only be described as being a nationwide campaign of hatred against me. The government has virtually unlimited resources and a monopoly on legal violence, and deficit spending is just a cost transfer to the public like all military expenditures. It is courtesy of the taxpayer. So there is no limit as far as what they will do to you. One political group in Chicago had a staggering 5,000 federal informants in it, just to give an example of the scope and scale of infiltration. I pissed off the government by using the internet on accident, which turns out to be pretty easy to do, and they fucked me up like a rag doll until I had a total mental breakdown. Now I'm here. That's gang stalking. It is hyper-militarized law enforcement abuse.